You may have seen Brexiteers crowing very recently about how the UK has seen off all those Brexit naysayers, those doomsayers were wrong, because the UK has managed to maintain its place, at least for the time being, by the looks of it, because if you look at the numbers, it wasn't exactly overly encouraging. And of course, when you dig down deep to the data, there's a lot more stuff going on than the Brexiteers even want to talk about. But essentially, what has happened is that the UK at the moment is still the number one place for people to come for financial services at this time. Now, that has greatly decreased because of Brexit. One thing they are not talking about in these numbers, we've seen GB News and certainly the Telegraph have this as a big headline on their websites, that this is the fantastic year we've seen off. But meanwhile, when you look at the data, that has decreased. The jobs have been leaving to go to Europe, to Frankfurt, to Amsterdam, even over to New York. And then they talk about, this must be really good for foreign investment. The UK must be lining up for all this new foreign investment to come into the UK, because of Brexit, as we all predicted. Well, no, since 2016, foreign direct investment has come down. Just because we are now holding all this money, which tends to be used for foreign direct investment, doesn't mean it's going to be used in the UK. And as we have seen, since 2016, the trend has been that foreign investment money, even though the UK sort of holds on to a lot of it from sort of banks and financial services, doesn't go in the UK, goes out of the country. So it is hardly, shall we say, the biggest Brexit win. But there is something else coming up as well. Sunak is off to go and see Biden this week and have a little, talk mainly about sort of Ukraine, a couple of other things as well. But a lot of people are asking the question, can Sunak finally achieve the long-held goal and belief of the Brexiteers that if they can get this American trade deal, this US trade deal, that it will mean that Brexit was all worth it? And as we always said, well, what exactly do you mean? What is going to be in part of this this fantastic, amazing sort of trade deal? What are the details going to be? Of course, they don't talk about that. Uh, you can understand why, considering we've seen the Australian trade deals and the New Zealand trade deals. How do you think the one with America is going to go if part of that Australian trade deal was written on the back of loo paper? We do not have many high hopes at all. But before we go talking more about this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And of course, as always, there is the YouTube Pony Club down below as well, and the YouTube thank you button as well. So thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way. So, as we said just a moment ago, this big USA trade deal was the reason for a lot of the Brexiteers, especially Daniel Hannan. Daniel Hannan always said, well, if we do end up leaving the customs union single market, we'll get this absolutely amazing trade deal from America. Now, Trump was going, yeah, I'll do a deal with the UK because of Brexit. Yeah, sure. But here's the thing. Trump's not the one who gets to ultimately decide that. It's a lot to do, especially with like the Congress, with the Senate. And of course, there's a whole, I think it's a whole subcommittee, if I remember, that actually is the one that decides to do the deals on this. But for those of you who have been at least paying attention to the patterns of, shall we say, world trade, the whole idea of free marketism has been very much discredited, because you have big countries like America that, because they have been more engaging in this free trade ideology, it has meant that manufacturing, jobs, stuff in America has been leaving to go to places like China, the Asia Pacific region, and that has resulted in exports from those regions coming into America. And of course, this has a big knock-on effect because even though the Brexiteers praise all this idea, what they don't seem to understand is all those things that are moving out of America are jobs. If you do not give or at least keep jobs in America, how are people going to be able to pay for all those imports? Even as cheaply as you might claim then that they want to be, how are they going to pay for them? And this is what we've been seeing. And now you have Biden, who has said, especially under the Inflation Reduction Act, massively gone in favor of protectionism. And this has really blown up the whole Brexit argument for free tradeism, because we have seen very, very much so the worm turning against, you know, all gun ho free tradeism. As you may hear Jacob Rees-Mogg say very often, the way we can solve our food crisis is we just put all our tariffs to zero. That will solve everything. No, it absolutely would not solve everything. It would probably be, at least in the short term, it would provide some relief, but in the long term, it would have far, far greater economic consequences than people like Jacob Rees-Mogg really want to admit. And this is what we are talking about. Even the Republicans and their much love for free trade are even at some point going to have to concede that protectionism is actually something that they need to engage with. And we have seen this again with the EU. The EU often portrayed by the Brexiteers as being really too protectionist. So, what do the Brexiteers mean by that? Well, of course, it was basically meaning that they weren't, shall we say, doing enough trade deals, or they weren't doing the right type of trade deals, which were meant basically lower standards, next to no tariffs, even though when you look at most trade deals around the world, tariffs are pretty low to begin with. But what Europe did, and what it always does, what it was, as we said, it protected jobs in Europe to keep jobs here. So that, there was still manufacturing, whatever you name it, so that jobs remained here. Because you need to keep jobs here. If you start saying, well, no, actually, we're going to rely on all these cheap imports, then you've got no farming jobs, you've got no manufacturing jobs, no fishing jobs. The knock-on effect constantly just keeps on rolling. And where does it stop? This is why this whole idea, this free market fundamentalism that the Brexiteers consistently engaged in and talked about for years, decrying how protectionist and how evil that was, we are now seeing these countries engage in protectionism. And even though Sunak might go over to America and try to convince Biden to try and do some sort of free trade deal, it's not going to happen. Biden and his administration, even really the current American government, even the Republicans aren't really interested in doing a free trade deal. Even if at the moment they've seen what happened with Australia and know that they could probably, pull the pants down around Rishi Sunak's, ankles and completely take him for a ride. It's not really in their best interest at this moment in time, because what is wanted by the Brexiteers in this America free trade deal is, well, complete, absolutely 0% free tariffs. That would have enormous negative economic consequences. Like I say, short term, there would be certainly some relief in sort of the cost of living crisis. You'd get all this cheap food in, but then longer term, the consequences would play out. This is why I have always said trade deals, when you look at other countries, even in America, trade deals are big politics. And we have been isolated from that politics because we have been in the EU. And that politics is about to come screaming slap bang straight into our government. Because people are going to start to realize, well, hold on, this trade deal actually isn't very good. Or the reason why farmers are closing, well, it's because of this Australian trade deal. I can't compete against all this Australian and New Zealand cheap meat that keeps on flooding in. So it's only going to be a matter of time before people actually realize what has happened with these trade deals, and then they become big politics. It's the same in every other country. We just haven't yet quite experienced it, but we're probably about to, especially now that the Australian and New Zealand trade deals are now in effect. And like I say, they want to do other deals with other countries. And like I say, if the Australian trade deal is anything to go by, I do not expect anything else from those other trade deals, because it's going to be based on this free market fundamentalism idea that it's okay to export jobs from the UK, and have everything cheaply imported. Well, eventually, what happens to your jobs? What happens to all that? As we said, short term, there would be some minor relief, but long term, there would be dire economic consequences for the UK. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And of course, as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way. So, as always, we'll see you all next time.